The slap of rain against the cafe window wasn't loud enough to drown out the crack of a hand against a young man's face. Jenny Keaton watched the waiter, Tommy, just 19, trembling like a leaf, stagger backward into a table, his tray of espresso cups shattering across the tile floor. The man who hit him didn't blink. Vincent Barzini, 32 years old, dressed in a suit that cost more than the cafe made in a month, stood with his hand still raised, his knuckles white, his eyes black as the storm outside. "You spilled on my shoe," Vincent said quietly. Too quietly. The cafe held its breath. Jenny's fingers tightened around the dish rag in her wrinkled hands. She was 73. Her knees ached. Her back hadn't straightened fully in a decade. But something ancient and maternal surged through her chest as she watched Tommy's lips split open, blood mixing with tears. She stepped forward. Her voice cut through the silence like a church bell. "Enough." Every head turned. Vincent Barzini's men, 4 of them wolves in tailored black, shifted on their feet. One reached inside his jacket. But Vincent raised a finger, and the man froze. The Mafia boss turned slowly to face Jenny. She was small, frail. Her hair was silver and thin, pulled back in a bun that had gone out of style 40 years ago. Her apron was stained with marinara and coffee. She looked like every nana in Naples, invisible, harmless, forgotten. But her eyes were fire. "You don't hit children," Jenny said, stepping between Vincent and Tommy. Her voice didn't waver. "Not in my cafe. Not anywhere." Vincent's jaw tightened. The room seemed to shrink around him. No one spoke to him like this. No one dared. "Your cafe." Vincent's voice was silk over a blade. "Old woman, do you know who I am?" "I know exactly who you are." The air crackled. Outside, thunder rolled across the Bay of Naples like a warning from God himself. Vincent took a step closer. He towered over her. "Then you know what happens to people who disrespect me." Jenny didn't move, didn't flinch. "I can give birth to you," she said, her voice trembling now, not with fear, but with something deeper, something that had been buried for 30 years. "So respect me." The words hung in the air like a curse. No one breathed. No one moved. The rain hammered against the glass. Vincent stared at her, his expression unreadable. Rage flickered behind his eyes, but something else too. Something he couldn't name. Confusion. Recognition. A ghost of a memory he didn't know he had. "What did you say?" he whispered. Jenny's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. "You heard me." One of his men stepped forward. "Boss, we should." Silent. She arrived every morning at 5, when the city was still dreaming, and left after sunset, when the streets belonged to stray cats and secrets. Her hands knew the rhythm of the espresso machine better than they knew prayer. Her feet had worn grooves into the floor behind the counter. This place was her sanctuary, her prison, her life. "Zia, Jenny, sit down before you collapse." The voice belonged to Matteo Corleone, the cafe's owner and the closest thing Jenny had to family. He was 57, broad-shouldered, with a thick black beard streaked with gray and eyes that crinkled when he smiled, which was often, despite the weight he carried. Jenny waved him off, still wiping down tables even though her hands were shaking. "I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar." Matteo gently took the rag from her hands and guided her into a chair by the window. The rain had softened to a drizzle. Outside, the street glistened like black glass. Tommy, the young waiter, brought her a cup of chamomile tea without being asked. His lip was swelling where Vincent had struck him, but his eyes were full of gratitude and confusion. "Why did you do that?" Tommy asked quietly. "He could have killed you." Jenny wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "Because someone had to." "That's not an answer," Matteo said, pulling up a chair across from her. His voice was kind but firm. "Jenny, that was Vincent Barzini. Do you understand what you've done?" She understood perfectly. Vincent Barzini was the youngest capo in the Camorra's history. He'd taken control of the Barzini family at 28, after his father's death 4 years ago. Some said he was brilliant. Others said he was ruthless. Everyone agreed he was dangerous. His father, Andy Barzini, had been a legend, a man who'd climbed from the streets to the top of Naples' underworld, leaving bodies and broken hearts in his wake. Jenny had been one of those hearts. I knew his father, she said quietly. Matteo's expression shifted. How well? Well enough. The cafe had emptied after Vincent's departure. It was just the three of them now, Jenny, Matteo, and Tommy. The espresso machine hissed softly in the background, a familiar lullaby. Tell me, Matteo urged. Jenny took a slow sip of tea, letting the warmth settle her nerves. Then she began. 31 years ago, Jenny had been 42 years old. A widow, her husband Paolo dead 3 years from a heart attack that took him in his sleep. She'd been lost, drowning in grief and loneliness, working double shifts just to avoid going home to an empty apartment. And then Andy Barzini walked into the cafe. He was different then. Younger. Hungry but not yet cruel. He had dark eyes that saw through walls and a smile that could make you believe in second chances. He came in every morning for 6 months ordering the same thing, doppio espresso, no sugar, and sitting in the corner booth reading the paper. He never spoke much, but he noticed her. One day she dropped a tray. Plates shattered everywhere. She'd been so tired, so worn down, that she just stood there in the wreckage and cried. Andy stood up, walked over and helped her clean every piece. You deserve better than this, he'd said. Then what? Then breaking yourself for people who don't see you. That was the beginning. For 8 months they were everything to each other. He made her laugh again. Made her feel young. He told her he worked in import-export, and she believed him because she wanted to. She didn't ask questions. She didn't want to know. Then she got pregnant. She'd been terrified but also hopeful. She told Andy on a warm spring evening, in the small apartment he kept near the port. She thought he'd be angry or scared or distant. Instead, he'd held her face in his hands and kissed her forehead. I'll take care of you, he promised. Both of you. 2 weeks later he disappeared. No calls. No letters. No explanations. She searched for him everywhere. Asked everyone, but it was like he'd been erased from the world. Then, 3 months later, she saw his picture in the newspaper. He was standing beside Giovanni Morelli, one of the most powerful mafia bosses in southern Italy. Andy wasn't import-export. He was Camorra. He'd been climbing the ranks, making alliances, spilling blood. And she'd been nothing but a distraction. A mistake. The stress of it all, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the fear, triggered a miscarriage. She lost the baby at 4 months. She nearly lost herself. She never tried to contact Andy again. Never told him about the child that never was. And then 8 years later she heard he'd gotten married. To a woman from a powerful mafia family. They had a son. Vincent. I didn't know what he looked like, Jenny said, her voice barely above a whisper. I avoided anything to do with that family. I buried it all. But when he walked in today, her voice cracked. I saw Andy's eyes. Matteo sat back heavily, exhaling through his nose. Madonna Santa. Tommy looked between them, lost. So, Vincent is not my son, Jenny said firmly. But he could have been. In another life if things had been different. She trailed off, staring out the window at the rain. What do you think he'll do? Tommy asked nervously. When he comes back. I don't know, Jenny admitted. But that was a lie. She knew exactly what men like Vincent did to people who challenged them. She'd seen it before. Her late husband Paolo had a cousin who'd crossed the wrong family. They found him in the harbor with his hands cut off. But she also knew something else. She'd seen the flicker of something in Vincent's eyes when she'd said those words. I can give birth to you. It had landed like a slap, like a prayer, like a ghost reaching out from the past. Maybe it was enough to keep her alive. Or maybe it would get her killed. That night, Jenny walked home alone through the narrow streets of Quartiere Spagnoli. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick with moisture, clinging to her skin like a warning. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of a crumbling building with peeling yellow paint. One room, a hot plate, a bed, a window that overlooked a courtyard where stray cats fought over scraps. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. And froze. Sitting in her only chair, backlit by the dim glow of a street lamp outside, was Vincent Barzini. He wasn't alone. Two of his men stood in the shadows near the doorway, silent as tombstones. "Hello, Jenny," Vincent said softly. Her heart slammed against her ribs, but she forced herself to stay calm. She closed the door behind her. "Breaking and entering," she said. "Your father taught you well." Vincent's expression didn't change. "You said you knew him." "I did." "How?" Jenny set her purse down on the small table by the door. Her hands were steady now. Fear had given way to something sharper. Something reckless. "I loved him," she said simply. "And he left me." Vincent leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, studying her face like a puzzle he needed to solve. "My father didn't leave women. He collected them. I wasn't a collection. I was a person." "Then why did he leave?" "Because the Camorra called. And I wasn't worth staying for." The words hung in the air, bitter and sharp. Vincent stood slowly. He was tall, imposing, but there was something fragile in the way he held himself now, like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure whether to jump or step back. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Jenny met his gaze without flinching. "I want you to stop," she said. "Stop hurting people like Tommy. Stop turning this city into a graveyard. Stop becoming the man your father was." Vincent's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about my father." "I know more than you think." "Then prove it." Jenny hesitated. Then she crossed the room to a small wooden chest beneath the window. She opened it, reached inside, and pulled out a single photograph, creased and faded but unmistakable. She handed it to Vincent. It was a picture of her and Andy, taken in front of the cafe 31 years ago. His arm was around her shoulders. She was laughing. He was looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Vincent stared at the photo for a long time. When he finally looked up, his eyes were different. Softer. Haunted. "He never looked at my mother like that," Vincent said quietly. Jenny took the photo back, her chest aching. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." Vincent straightened, his mask sliding back into place. "My mother was a viper. She made his life hell. Maybe he deserved it." He turned toward the door, gesturing for his men to follow. But before he left, he paused. "I'll think about what you said," Vincent murmured. "But don't mistake my curiosity for mercy. If you cross me again, I won't hesitate." And then he was gone. Jenny sank onto the bed, her body shaking with relief and terror and something she couldn't name. She'd poked the lion. Now she had to pray it wouldn't devour her. 3 days passed like held breath. Jenny went to work. Served coffee. Smiled at customers. Pretended everything was normal. But her hands trembled when she poured, and she kept glancing at the door, waiting for Vincent to return. Or for someone worse. Matteo noticed. He always did. "You should leave Naples," he said on the third morning, as they prepared the cafe for opening. "Go stay with your cousin in Rome. Just for a few weeks until this blows over." "It won't blow over," Jenny replied, arranging pastries in the display case. "And I won't run." "Stubborn woman. You knew that when you hired me." Matteo smiled sadly, but the worry never left his eyes. At exactly 11 o'clock the door opened. But it wasn't Vincent. It was a woman. She was in her early 60s, elegant in a way that money couldn't buy, the kind of elegance that came from bloodlines and power. Her hair was dark, streaked with silver, pulled back in a perfect chignon. She wore a black dress that whispered wealth, and her heels clicked against the tile like a judge's gavel. Behind her stood 2 men in suits. Not Vincent's men. Different family. Different danger. The cafe's chatter died instantly. The woman's eyes swept the room with cold precision, then locked onto Jenny. "You," she said. Her voice was smooth as silk, sharp as a knife. "You're the one." Jenny straightened, wiping her hands on her apron. "I don't know what you're talking about." The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Don't insult me with lies. You're the waitress who humiliated my son in front of his men. The air turned to ice. Ginny's throat tightened. You're Vincent's mother. Isabel Corleone Barzini, the woman corrected, stepping forward. And you've made a grave mistake. Matteo moved protectively toward Jenny, but one of Isabel's men shifted his jacket just enough to reveal the gun underneath. Matteo froze. Isabel stopped 3 feet from Jenny, studying her like an insect under glass. My son came home troubled, Isabel said softly. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't speak, just stared at a photograph for hours. Do you know how rare that is? Vincent doesn't feel things. I made sure of that. I raised him to be stone. She tilted her head, her gaze cutting. But you cracked something in him. And I want to know why. Jenny forced herself to breathe. I only asked him to show respect. No. Isabel's voice dropped to a whisper. You said something else. Something about giving birth to him. Her eyes narrowed. Tell me, Putana, did you warm my husband's bed? The slur hit like a slap, but Jenny didn't flinch. I loved Andy before you ever owned him, Jenny said quietly. And yes, he loved me too. Briefly. Before the Camorra swallowed him whole. Isabel's composure cracked just for a second. Rage flashed across her face, then vanished beneath her mask. You're nothing, Isabel hissed. A ghost from a weak man's past. You mean nothing to Vincent, and you mean nothing to this family. Then why are you here? The question landed like a blade. Isabel's jaw tightened. For a moment she looked almost vulnerable, almost human. Then the door opened again. Vincent strode in, flanked by 4 of his men. His eyes took in the scene instantly. His mother, her guards, Jenny standing her ground, and his expression darkened. Mama, he said coldly. What are you doing? Protecting you, Isabel replied smoothly. From distractions. I don't need protection. You've been compromised. I've been thinking. The tension between mother and son crackled like lightning. Isabel's men shifted uncomfortably. Vincent's men mirrored them. The cafe had become a powder keg. Jenny knew she should stay silent, should disappear into the background. But she'd never been good at keeping quiet. If you two want to have a family argument, Jenny said firmly, do it somewhere else. You're scaring my customers. Both Vincent and Isabel turned to stare at her. Then impossibly Vincent laughed. It was a short, bitter sound but genuine. You're fearless, he said, shaking his head. Or insane. Both, Jenny replied. Isabel's eyes blazed. Vincent, I'm warning you. Basta, Mama. Vincent's voice turned to steel. Leave. Now. You don't dismiss me. I just did. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Finally, Isabel turned on her heel and walked toward the door. But before leaving, she paused beside Jenny, leaning in close enough to whisper. You'll regret this, Isabel breathed. I'll make sure of it. Then she was gone, her men trailing behind like shadows. The cafe exhaled collectively. Vincent stood in the center of the room, his hands in his pockets, staring at the floor. His men waited for orders, but he waved them toward the door. Outside. All of you. They obeyed without question. Now it was just Vincent, Jenny, and Matteo, who looked ready to have a heart attack. Vincent finally looked up at Jenny. We need to talk. I'm working. It wasn't a request. Matteo stepped forward. She said she's working. Show some respect. Vincent's gaze shifted to Matteo, appraising him. You care about her. She's family. Then you'll want to keep her alive. Vincent turned back to Jenny. My mother doesn't make idle threats. You embarrassed me. Now you've embarrassed her. That makes you a problem. I didn't ask to be anyone's problem. But you are. Vincent moved closer, his voice lowering. And there's only one way to fix this. Jenny's heart hammered. What are you talking about? Vincent hesitated. And in that hesitation, Jenny saw something she hadn't expected. Uncertainty. Conflict. Maybe even fear. My mother is planning something, Vincent said quietly. She's been meeting with the Rossi family. They're rivals. If they form an alliance against me, I'm finished. I need leverage. Information. Proof of what she's doing. What does that have to do with me? She's hosting a dinner party tomorrow night. All the families will be there. I need someone on the inside. Someone she won't suspect. Jenny stared at him. You want me to spy on your own mother? I want you to survive. And the only way you do that is if you're useful to me. That's insane. That's the Camorra. Matteo grabbed Jenny's arm. Don't listen to him. This is a trap. But Vincent shook his head. If I wanted her dead, she'd already be gone. I'm offering protection. Help me and I'll make sure my mother doesn't touch you. Refuse and... He trailed off, letting the implication hang. Jenny pulled away from Matteo, her mind racing. This was madness. Getting involved with Mafia politics was a death sentence. She should refuse. Should run. But then she thought of Tommy's bleeding lip. Of Andy's broken promises. Of 31 years spent hiding from the truth. She was so tired of being invisible. Of being powerless. What exactly would I have to do? Jenny asked slowly. Vincent's expression shifted. Relief mixed with something darker. The party needs extra servers. You'll work the event. Listen. Watch. Report back to me. And if I'm caught? You won't be. You're just a waitress. No one sees you. The words stung, but they were true. That's what she'd always been. Invisible, ignored, beneath notice. Maybe it was time to use that. I'll do it, Jenny said. Jenny, no, Matteo protested. But she silenced him with a look. On one condition, she continued, meeting Vincent's gaze. You promise me something. I don't make promises. Then we have no deal. Vincent studied her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. What do you want? When this is over, Jenny said firmly, you leave Tommy alone. And you start treating people like they matter. No more violence for violence's sake. No more cruelty. Vincent's jaw tightened. You're asking me to change my nature. I'm asking you to find the part of you that's still human. For a moment Vincent looked like he might walk away. Might laugh in her face. Instead he extended his hand. One step at a time, he said quietly. Jenny hesitated. Then she shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and terrifyingly gentle. Tomorrow night, Vincent said. 8 o'clock. Wear black. And whatever you do. His eyes locked onto hers. Don't trust anyone. Not even me. Then he turned and walked out, leaving Jenny standing in the wreckage of her ordinary life, wondering what she just agreed to. Matteo grabbed her shoulders. Have you lost your mind? Probably, Jenny admitted. But for the first time in 31 years, she felt something other than regret. She felt alive. The next morning, Jenny woke to find an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a typed note. 2 p.m. Piazza del Plebiscito. Come alone. Beneath it was 500 euros in crisp bills. She stared at the money like it might bite her. Blood money. Mafia money. Money that came with strings attached and bodies in its wake. But her rent was overdue. Her pension barely covered food. And pride didn't pay bills. She tucked the euros into her bra and went to work. At 2 o'clock, Jenny stood in the vast expanse of Piazza del Plebiscito, dwarfed by the colonnades and the shadow of the royal palace. Tourists milled about taking photographs. Street performers played accordion. The sun was warm, almost kind. A black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The rear door opened. Vincent sat inside, dressed in a charcoal suit, looking every inch the prince of the underworld. He gestured for her to get in. Jenny glanced around, searching for witnesses for safety for an escape route, then climbed inside. The door closed with a heavy thunk. The driver pulled into traffic without a word. Where are we going? Jenny asked. Somewhere we can talk without being watched, Vincent replied. He handed her a garment bag. You'll need this for tonight. Jenny unzipped it cautiously. Inside was an elegant black server's uniform, Tailored, expensive, nothing like the cheap polyester she usually wore. "It'll fit," Vincent said. "I had it made." "How did you know my size?" "I'm observant." Something about the way he said it made her skin prickle, not with fear, but with an unsettling awareness. He'd been watching her, studying her. "Where did you learn to notice details like that?" Jenny asked, folding the uniform carefully. "My father." Vincent's expression darkened. He said the difference between living and dying in our world is noticing what others miss. The waiter who glances at the exit too often. The woman who orders wine but doesn't drink it. The man who smiles with his mouth but not his eyes. Sounds exhausting. It is. The car wound through narrow streets climbing toward Posillipo, the affluent hillside neighborhood overlooking the bay. The buildings here were pastel villas with iron gates and gardens that cost more to maintain than most people earned in a year. They stopped in front of a modest estate, modest by these standards anyway. Cream-colored walls, terracotta roof, bougainvillea cascading over the entrance. "This is yours?" Jenny asked as they exited the car. "One of my properties. Somewhere my mother doesn't know about." Vincent unlocked the gate and led her through a courtyard filled with lemon trees and the soft trickle of a fountain. Inside, the house was surprisingly understated. Clean lines. Minimal furniture. Books on shelves, actual books worn and read. Jenny scanned the spines. Dante, Calvino, Pavese. Literature, not ledgers. "You read?" she said, surprised. Vincent shrugged off his jacket. "My father couldn't. He was illiterate until he was 25. He wore it like a badge, proof he'd clawed his way up from nothing. But I saw how it shamed him. How men with education made him feel small." He poured 2 glasses of water from a pitcher. "I swore I'd never feel small." He handed her a glass and their fingers brushed. Jenny pulled away quickly, taking a sip. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked about my father like you actually cared about the answer." "I cared about the man I knew, not the monster he became." Vincent leaned against the counter, studying her. "Do you think people can be both?" "I think people are complicated. And the world makes them more so." Diplomatic answer. Honest answer. A silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but weighted with things unsaid. Finally Vincent straightened. "Let's get to work. You need to know what you're walking into tonight." He led her to a dining room where a table had been covered with photographs, documents, and a hand-drawn map of a large house. "This is my mother's estate," Vincent explained, pointing to the map. "The dinner will be in the main ballroom here. Guests will arrive at 8. There will be roughly 40 people, heads of families, their wives, key associates. And what am I looking for? Conversations. Alliances. Who sits with whom? Who avoids whom?" He slid a photograph toward her. "This man is Luca Rossi, head of the Rossi family. If my mother is plotting against me, he's the linchpin. Watch him." Jenny studied the photo. Luca was in his 50s, silver-haired, with a shark smile. "And if I see them talking? Listen. Remember every word. Every gesture." Vincent pulled out another photograph. This one showed a younger woman, beautiful and cold-eyed. "This is Gabriella Rossi, Luca's daughter. She's brilliant, ruthless, and ambitious. She might be there. What's her role in this? Unknown. That's what worries me." Vincent's jaw tightened. "My mother has been suggesting I marry Gabriella. Cement an alliance between families." Jenny's stomach twisted unexpectedly. "And will you?" Vincent's eyes met hers. "I don't take orders. Not even from her." The intensity of his gaze made Jenny look away. She cleared her throat. "What else do I need to know?" For the next 2 hours Vincent walked her through the layout, the players, the protocols. He taught her how to fade into the background, how to position herself to overhear conversations, how to read body language. "You're a natural observer," he said at one point. "You've been watching people your whole life, haven't you?" Jenny thought of all those years in the cafe, invisible, ignored, seeing everything. "It's what invisible people do," she said quietly. Vincent stopped, turning to face her fully. You're not invisible. I've been invisible for 30 years. Not to me. The words hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Ginny's heart did something complicated in her chest. This was Andy's son. A mafia boss. A killer. She should feel nothing but wariness. So why did his attention feel like sunlight after decades of shadow? We should keep working, she said, breaking the moment. Vincent nodded, but something had shifted in the air. At 6 o'clock, Vincent's driver took Ginny home to change. The uniform fit perfectly because of course it did. She stared at herself in the cracked mirror of her tiny bathroom. She looked different. The elegant cut of the clothing, the way it made her stand straighter, hold her head higher. She looked like someone who mattered. Dangerous thinking, she told herself. A knock at the door made her jump. She opened it to find Matteo standing there, holding a small box. I knew you wouldn't think of this, he said, handing it to her. Inside was a delicate gold cross on a chain, the one his late wife used to wear. Matteo, I can't. You can and you will. He stepped inside, taking the necklace and clasping it around her neck with shaking fingers. Maria would have wanted you to have protection, even if it's just the illusion of it. His eyes were wet. Ginny hugged him fiercely. I'll be careful. You'll be in a viper's nest. Careful won't be enough. He pulled back, gripping her shoulders. If anything feels wrong, you leave. You understand? I don't care what Vincent promised. You get out. I promise. But they both knew it was a promise she might not be able to keep. At 7:30, the Mercedes picked her up again. But this time Vincent wasn't inside. Instead, there was an older woman, 60-something, severe, dressed in an identical server's uniform. I'm Clara, the woman said in a voice like gravel. I've worked for the Barzini family for 30 years. I'll be supervising the staff tonight. You stay close to me, keep your mouth shut, and do exactly as I say. Capice? Capice, Jenny replied. Clara's eyes narrowed. Vincent vouched for you. Don't make him regret it. And don't make me regret not asking more questions. They drove in silence through the hills, finally arriving at a sprawling estate that made Vincent's property look like a gardener's cottage. The main house was a 3-story Renaissance villa, all arches and marble and old money. Jenny's pulse hammered as they entered through the service entrance. The kitchen was chaos. Chefs barking orders, servers rushing with trays, the smell of garlic and wine and roasted meat filling the air. Clara grabbed Jenny's arm. You'll work the ballroom. Champagne and appetizers. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't make eye contact. Don't be seen. I understand. Clara studied her with new interest. Maybe you do. At exactly 8 o'clock, the guests began to arrive. Jenny stood in the shadows of the ballroom with a tray of champagne flutes, watching as Naples' most powerful criminals filled the room in tuxedos and designer gowns. And then Isabel made her entrance. She wore crimson, the color of blood and power, her hair swept up, diamonds at her throat. She moved through the room like a queen, accepting kisses and murmured greetings with practiced grace. Her eyes swept over the servers. For one heart-stopping moment they landed on Jenny, then moved on, dismissive. Invisible, Jenny reminded herself. You're invisible. She circulated with the champagne, ears straining to catch fragments of conversation. Shipment from Albania arrives Tuesday. The commission won't approve it. Vincent's too volatile, too much like his father. That last one made her pause. 2 men in their 50s standing near the window. Isabel's right to be concerned, one murmured. The boy has his father's temper but none of his control. Andy knew when to bleed and when to negotiate. Vincent only knows blood. Jenny moved away before they noticed her lingering. Then she saw him. Luca Rossi stood near the fireplace, laughing with a group of men. And beside him Gabriella. She was even more striking in person. Tall, raven-haired, wearing a black dress that cost more than Jenny's annual salary. She touched Luca's arm, leaned in, whispered something. He nodded. Then Isabel joined them. Jenny's breath caught. This was it. The meeting Vincent had predicted. She needed to get closer. She wove through the crowd with her tray, heart pounding, positioning herself near a group of wives chatting just behind where Isabel, Luca, and Gabriella stood. Proposal is generous, Luca was saying. It's mutually beneficial, Isabel replied smoothly. Your family gains influence in the port. Mine gains stability. You mean control over your son. Isabel's smile didn't waver. I mean a future that doesn't end in a war we can't win. Gabriella spoke, her voice honey over steel. Vincent is impressive. But he's making enemies faster than he can bury them. Someone needs to moderate his impulses. And you believe you can do that? Luca asked his daughter. I believe I can do many things. The way she said it made Ginny's skin crawl. When? Luca asked Isabel. The engagement announcement can be made within the month. The wedding by spring. Ginny's stomach dropped. They were planning to marry Vincent off like a piece of property. To control him. To cage him. And if he refuses? Gabriella asked. Isabel's expression turned to ice. He won't. I'll make certain of it. How? By removing the distraction. Ginny's blood ran cold. She was the distraction. Before she could process this, someone grabbed her arm. She spun to find a young man, one of Vincent's men, dressed as a server. He leaned close. Vincent says leave. Now. You've been made. What? How? Now. But it was too late. Isabel turned, her eyes locking onto Jenny with sudden, terrible recognition. You, Isabel breathed. The ballroom fell silent. Time fractured into crystalline shards. Isabel's eyes burned into Jenny's face. Every head in the ballroom turned. The champagne flute trembled in Jenny's hand. The waitress from the cafe, Isabel said, her voice cutting through the silence like a scalpel. How fascinating that you found employment here. Tell me, who hired you? Jenny's throat closed. The young man who'd warned her had vanished into the crowd. Clara was nowhere to be seen. She was alone in a room full of wolves. I was sent by the agency, Jenny managed. I didn't know. Didn't know what? Isabel glided closer, a predator scenting blood. Didn't know this was my home? Or didn't know you'd been sent here to spy? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Luca Rossi stepped forward, his hand moving subtly toward his jacket. Other men did the same. The air crackled with violence waiting to be unleashed. I'm just a server, Jenny said, forcing her voice steady. I came to work. Nothing more. Lying to me is unwise. Isabel reached out and gripped Jenny's chin, forcing her to meet her gaze. Her fingers were cold as marble. My son put you up to this. Didn't he? I don't know what you're. Don't lie to me. The champagne flute slipped from Jenny's hand, shattering against the floor. And then Vincent's voice cut through the chaos. Let her go, Mama. He stood in the ballroom entrance, flanked by 6 of his men, all armed. His face was stone, but his eyes blazed with barely controlled fury. Isabel didn't release Jenny. How dare you bring your soldiers into my home? How dare you threaten what's mine? The word mine echoed through the room like a gunshot. Isabel's grip tightened on Jenny's face. This woman is nothing. A relic from your father's indiscretions. She's under my protection. Your protection? Isabel laughed, sharp and bitter. You protect her? This old fool who spreads lies about loving your father. They're not lies, Vincent said quietly. Dangerously. Isabel finally released Jenny, shoving her backward. Jenny stumbled, and one of Vincent's men caught her, steadying her. You're blinded by sentiment, Isabel hissed at Vincent. Just like Andy was. This woman is poison. She corrupted your father, made him weak. My father was never weak, Vincent interrupted. Cruel, yes. Ruthless, yes. But weak? Never. You didn't know him like I did. Neither did you, apparently. The insult landed like a slap. Isabel's composure cracked, rage flooding her features. I was his wife. I bore his son. I built his empire while he chased skirts and sentiment. You built nothing, Vincent shot back. You married into power and spent 30 years resenting that he never loved you. The ballroom held its collective breath. Isabel's hand flew to her chest, and for a moment she looked genuinely wounded. Then the mask returned harder than before. This discussion is over, she said coldly. Take your whore and leave. You're no longer welcome in this house. Good, Vincent said. Because I'm done pretending to be your obedient son. He turned to leave, gesturing for Jenny and his men to follow. But Gabriella Rossi stepped into his path. Leaving so soon? She asked, her voice smooth as silk. And here I thought we'd finally have a chance to talk about our future. Vincent's expression didn't change. We have no future. Your mother thinks otherwise. My mother doesn't speak for me. Gabriella tilted her head, studying him with those cold, calculating eyes. You know what happens when families fracture, Vincent. When sons defy mothers. When alliances crumble. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. But Jenny was close enough to catch it. Wars start. People die. Empires burn. Let them burn, Vincent said. He brushed past her, and this time no one stopped him. They didn't speak until they were in the car, Vincent, Jenny, and two of his men in a Mercedes speeding through the dark streets of Naples. Jenny's hands wouldn't stop shaking. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only terror and exhaustion in its wake. You shouldn't have come for me, she finally said. Vincent stared out the window. I told you. You're under my protection. I'm not worth starting a war over. That's not your decision to make. Jenny turned to look at him. In the passing streetlights, his face was all sharp angles and shadows. What did I overhear that was so important you'd risk everything? Vincent was silent for a long moment. Then he said, Tell me exactly what you heard. Jenny recounted the conversation between Isabel, Luca, and Gabriella. The marriage arrangement, the timeline, the plan to remove the distraction. Vincent's jaw clenched tighter with every word. She's planning to kill me, Jenny finished quietly. No, Vincent said. She's planning to use you as leverage. Kill you and I become an enemy. Threaten you and I become controllable. His eyes met hers. She thinks you matter to me. Do I? The question escaped before Jenny could stop it. Vincent held her gaze. Yes. The single word carried the weight of a confession. Jenny's heart stuttered. Vincent, I'm 73 years old. I'm nobody. You're the first person in 20 years to see me as human instead of a monster. Vincent interrupted. You're the first person to ask me to be better instead of just more powerful. He stopped himself, looking away. You remind me that there's a world outside blood and power. Jenny couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Your father said something similar to me once, she whispered. Right before he disappeared. Vincent's expression darkened. My father was a liar. He was complicated. He was a coward. Vincent leaned forward, his voice rough with old pain. Do you want to know how he really died? Jenny had heard the official story, heart attack, sudden, tragic. It wasn't his heart, Vincent continued. It was suicide. He put a gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger in his office. I found him. His voice cracked just slightly. I was 24 years old, and I found my father's brains splattered across his desk. Horror washed over Jenny. Vincent. There was a note. 3 words. I'm too tired. Vincent's laugh was bitter. The great Andy Barzini, king of Naples, too tired to keep living. And my mother? She covered it up. Paid doctors, bribed officials, rewrote history. Because God forbid the Barzini name be tarnished by weakness. Jenny reached out instinctively, placing her hand over his. He stared at their joined hands like he'd forgotten what comfort felt like. He called your name, Vincent said quietly. Right before he did it. I was outside the door. I heard him. He said, Jenny, I'm sorry. Then the gunshot. Tears spilled down Jenny's cheeks. No. I spent years wondering who Jenny was. What you meant to him. Why his last words were for someone who wasn't his wife or his son. Vincent's fingers curled around hers, gripping tight. And then you walked into my life and said those words, "I can give birth to you," and I saw it in your eyes. The grief. The love. The loss. I didn't know, Jenny whispered. I swear I didn't know he never stopped loving you, Vincent said. I know that now. My mother knew it too. That's why she hates you. That's why she'll never stop until you're destroyed. The car stopped. Jenny looked up to realize they'd arrived at Vincent's private villa, the one with the lemon trees and books. You're staying here, Vincent said. It's the only place she can't reach you. I can't just disappear. I have my job, my life. Your life is forfeit if you go back to that apartment. Vincent's intensity pinned her in place. Please, Jenny. Trust me. She should refuse. Should run. Should never have gotten involved in this world. But when she looked into Vincent's eyes, she didn't see a mafia boss. She saw a boy who'd found his father's body. A man carrying unbearable weight. A soul searching desperately for redemption. She saw Andy's eyes, but warmer, more vulnerable, more real than Andy's had ever been. Okay, she whispered. Vincent exhaled, relief flooding his features. He helped her out of the car, his hand warm and steady on her arm. As they walked through the courtyard, the scent of night-blooming jasmine filled the air. There's something else you should know, Vincent said as they reached the door. What? He hesitated, then pulled an envelope from his jacket. After my father died, I found this in his safe. It's addressed to you. I've been carrying it for 4 years. Jenny took the envelope with trembling hands. Her name was written on the front in Andy's familiar scrawl. Why didn't you give it to me before? She asked. Because I was afraid of what it might say. Afraid it would confirm that his whole life, his marriage, his son, his empire, meant less to him than the woman he lost. Vincent's vulnerability in that moment was so raw, so complete, that Jenny forgot to breathe. She opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper, dated 3 days before Andy's death. Jenny, if you're reading this, I've finally found the courage to stop running. I loved you. I still love you. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. I left you because I was building something I thought mattered: power, respect, and empire. But I built it all on blood and lies, and every stone of it is hollow. You were real. You were light. And I traded you for darkness. I have a son. His name is Vincent. He's brilliant and brave, but I'm terrified he'll become me. I'm terrified I've already ruined him just by being his father. If you ever meet him, please tell him something for me. Tell him he doesn't have to be what I was. Tell him love is stronger than fear. Tell him it's never too late to choose differently. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to choose you. I'm sorry for everything. Forgive me or don't. I deserve whatever judgment you give. Forever yours, Andy. Jenny's hand shook so hard the letter fluttered to the ground. Vincent picked it up, his eyes scanning the words he'd probably memorized years ago. He was wrong, Vincent said softly. It is too late. For him. But maybe. He looked at Jenny, and in his eyes was a desperate, fragile hope. Maybe not for me. Jenny stepped forward and did something that surprised them both. She pulled Vincent into her arms. He stiffened, shocked, then slowly, tentatively, he returned the embrace. His arms came around her, and he held on like a drowning man clutching a lifeline. You're not your father, Jenny whispered fiercely. You're better. You can be better. And it's not too late, Vincent. It's never too late. She felt him shudder against her, felt the crack in his armor widen. When they finally pulled apart, his eyes were wet. Stay, he said again. Not an order. A plea. I'll stay, Jenny promised. Neither of them knew if she was agreeing to stay the night, or something far more dangerous. But in that moment, standing in the jasmine-scented courtyard with Naples glittering below them, and the weight of the past finally beginning to lift, it didn't matter. For the first time in 31 years, Jenny wasn't invisible. And for the first time in his life, Vincent wasn't alone. For 3 days, Jenny lived in a world suspended between dream and nightmare. Vincent's villa became her sanctuary. She walked among the lemon trees, read his books, cooked simple meals in a kitchen bigger than her entire apartment. He came by each evening and they talked about everything and nothing. About Andy, about the past, about who they might have been in different lives. He never touched her again. But the way he looked at her carried the weight of unspoken things. On the fourth morning, Ginny woke to silence. No guards outside. No sounds of the city. Just eerie absolute quiet. She found a note on the kitchen counter in Vincent's handwriting. Emergency meeting with the commission. Back by noon. Don't leave the house. V. By 1 o'clock, he hadn't returned. By 3, Ginny's anxiety had sharpened into fear. At 4:30, her old mobile phone rang, the one she'd brought from her apartment. Mateo's name flashed on the screen. Zia. Ginny, thank God. Mateo? What's wrong? His voice was strangled with panic. They came to the cafe. Isabel's men. They were looking for you, asking questions, and when I wouldn't tell them anything. He choked on a sob. They took Tommy. Ginny's blood turned to ice. What? They took him, Ginny. They said if you want to see him alive again, you'll come to the old cannery at the port. Alone. By sunset. Mateo was crying now. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, I should have. This isn't your fault, Ginny said, her voice hollow. Did you call Vincent? I tried. He's not answering. No one knows where he is. Because he was in a meeting. Unreachable. And Isabel knew it. This was planned. Perfectly timed. A trap. Ginny looked at the clock. Sunset was in 90 minutes. I'm going, she said. Ginny, no. It's suicide. He's 19 years old, Mateo. He has his whole life ahead of him. I won't let him die for me. And what about Vincent? What do I tell him? Ginny's throat tightened. Tell him I'm sorry. And that he's not his father. He's better. He always was. She hung up before Mateo could argue. The old cannery squatted on the waterfront like a rusted carcass. Abandoned for a decade, windows broken, walls tagged with graffiti. The setting sun painted everything blood red. Ginny walked through the shattered entrance, her heart a drum in her chest. Hello. Her voice echoed in the cavernous space. Footsteps emerged from the shadows. But it wasn't Isabel. It was Gabriella Rossi, flanked by 4 armed men. The martyr arrives, Gabriella said, smiling like a viper. How predictable. Where's Tommy? Ginny demanded. Gabriella gestured lazily. 2 men dragged Tommy forward, bruised, bleeding but alive. His eyes went wide when he saw Ginny. No, Tommy gasped. You shouldn't have come. One of the men hit him and he crumpled. Leave him alone. Ginny lunged forward, but Gabriella raised a hand and a gun appeared, pressed to Tommy's temple. Don't, Gabriella said softly. Move. Ginny froze. Better. Gabriella circled her slowly. You've caused quite the disruption, old woman. Vincent's refusing the marriage. Defying his mother. Fracturing alliances that took years to build. All for what? You. I never asked for any of this. And yet here we are. Gabriella stopped in front of her. Isabel wanted to kill you quickly, efficiently. But I convinced her there's a better way. What do you want? I want you to disappear. Permanently. And I want Vincent to watch you do it. Gabriella's smile widened. He's on his way now. Got a frantic call from your cafe owner friend about 20 minutes ago. Should be here any moment. Ginny's stomach dropped. You used me as bait. You're useful for something at least. The sound of screeching tires outside made Gabriella's smile sharpen. Right on time. Vincent burst through the entrance, gun drawn, 5 of his men behind him. He took in the scene instantly. Ginny, Tommy, Gabriella's men, the trap. Let them go, Vincent said, his voice deadly calm. Put down your weapon first, Gabriella countered. That's not happening. Then the boy dies. She nodded, and the gun pressed harder against Tommy's head. He whimpered. Vincent's eyes flicked to Ginny. In them she saw anguish, rage, and terrible calculation. Take me instead, Vincent said. Let them go. You want leverage over me? Here I am. Vincent, no. Ginny shouted. Gabriella laughed. Touching, but insufficient. You see, this isn't about leverage anymore. This is about breaking you. Completely. So you understand the cost of defiance. She raised her own gun, pointed it at Jenny's chest. No. Vincent's roar filled the cannery. Everything happened at once. Vincent fired. Gabriella's men returned fire. The world exploded into chaos and gunpowder and screaming. Jenny hit the ground as bullets tore through the air above her. She saw Tommy scramble away, saw Vincent's men engage Gabriella's in brutal close combat, saw Vincent tackle Gabriella, sending her gun skittering across the concrete. Then pain exploded in Jenny's side. She looked down, confused, and saw blood spreading across her black shirt. One of the stray bullets had found her. Jenny! Vincent's voice distant and broken. Her vision blurred. The ceiling spun. Cold spread through her limbs like ice water. Vincent's face appeared above her, his hands pressing against her wound. His expression was shattered, pure, unfiltered terror. No, 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 stay with me, Jenny, stay with me. Tommy, she gasped. Is he? He's safe. Don't talk, save your strength, the ambulance is coming. But they both knew. The blood was spreading too fast. Her breathing was shallow, rattling. Vincent, she whispered, reaching up with a trembling hand to touch his face. You're going to be okay. You're going to choose differently. Don't you dare, he choked out, tears streaming down his face. Don't you dare leave me. Not after I finally, his voice broke. Not after I finally found you. Jenny's vision was fading, the edges going dark. Not your fault, she breathed. Never. Your fault. Her hand fell. Vincent caught it, clutching it to his chest, and the sound that tore from his throat was something between a prayer and a death cry. Jenny! But the darkness had already taken her. 36 hours later, Jenny woke to the antiseptic smell of hospital and the steady beep of machines. Her side burned like fire. Her throat was sandpaper. But she was breathing. She was alive. Matteo's face appeared above her, tears streaming. You're awake. You're awake, grazie a Dio. Jenny tried to speak, but only a croak emerged. Don't talk, Matteo said, gently squeezing her hand. The bullet missed your vital organs by centimeters. The doctor said it was a miracle. You've been unconscious for a day and a half. Memory crashed back. The cannery. Gabriella. The gunfire. Tommy, she rasped. Safe. Shaken but safe. He's been here every day. Matteo's expression shifted. Vincent too. Jenny's heart lurched. Where is he? Handling things. Matteo's voice dropped. Jenny, after you were shot, he changed. Something broke in him. Or maybe something finally came together. He's been. The door opened. Vincent stood in the doorway, and Jenny barely recognized him. His suit was wrinkled. His face was drawn, shadowed with sleeplessness. But his eyes were different. Softer. More human. Like a man who'd walked through hell and decided to come back. I'll give you privacy, Matteo said quietly, squeezing Jenny's hand once more before leaving. Vincent approached slowly, like she might vanish if he moved too fast. He sat in the chair beside her bed. His hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles were white. You died, he said hoarsely. For 43 seconds in the ambulance your heart stopped. And his voice broke. I've killed men. Ordered executions. Watched people beg for mercy and felt nothing. But watching you die. He covered his face with his hands. Jenny reached out, ignoring the pain, and touched his arm. He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. I'm still here, she whispered. Vincent grasped her hand like a lifeline. I don't deserve you. I brought you into this. I put you in danger. Stop, Jenny said firmly, though her voice was weak. I made my choices. And I'd make them again. Why? Because someone had to show you that you matter. Not as a mafia boss. Not as Andy's son. As Vincent. Just Vincent. Something crumbled in his expression. He brought her hand to his forehead, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Jenny ran her fingers through his hair. This dangerous man, this broken boy, and let him cry. When he finally composed himself, he didn't let go of her hand. Gabriella is dead, he said quietly. She tried to escape during the firefight, fell from the second floor, broke her neck. Jenny absorbed this. And Isabel? Vincent's jaw set. Under house arrest. My men are surrounding her estate. She's made calls, trying to rally support, form alliances against me. But something's changed. What? The other families are watching. Waiting. They saw what happened at her dinner party. They know she tried to have you killed to control me. And they're wondering. He paused. If a son can't protect one old woman from his own mother, how can he protect their interests? So it's become a test. Everything in my world is a test. Vincent's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. But for the first time, I don't care about their approval. I only care about doing what's right. Jenny's eyes filled with tears. Andy would be proud of you. I'm not doing it for him. Vincent's gaze locked onto hers. I'm doing it for you. Because you asked me to be better. And because... He hesitated, vulnerable and uncertain. Because I can't lose you. I can't go back to being what I was before you. Vincent. I love you, he said simply. I know it's impossible. I know the age difference, the circumstances, everything about this is insane. But when I thought you were dead, the only thing I could think was that I'd never told you. And I couldn't let you wake up without knowing. Jenny's tears spilled over. I'm old enough to be your mother. You're nothing like my mother. You're everything she isn't. Kind, courageous, real. He leaned closer. And I don't care about age or logic or what the world thinks. I only care that you're alive. And that maybe, if you feel even a fraction of what I feel. I do, Jenny whispered. God help me, I do. The admission hung between them, fragile and precious. Vincent stood, leaning over her carefully, mindful of her injuries. His hand cupped her face with infinite gentleness. When this is over, he said softly, when Isabel can't hurt you anymore, when you're healed, I want to build a different life. With you. No violence. No empire. Just something real. Can you walk away from all this? I don't know, he admitted. But I want to try. For you. For the man I could be. His thumb brushed away her tears. Will you help me? Jenny's heart, battered and scarred and 73 years old, opened like a flower toward the sun. Yes, she breathed. Vincent smiled. A real smile, genuine and beautiful and rare as diamonds. He pressed his forehead to hers. Then I'm going to end this. Tonight. I'm going to face my mother and break the cycle my father started. How? By telling the truth. All of it. In front of the commission. Vincent straightened, resolve hardening his features. She built her power on lies and manipulation. It's time everyone knew exactly who Isabel Barzini really is. She'll fight back. Let her. I'm done being afraid. He kissed Jenny's forehead softly. Rest. Heal. And when you wake up tomorrow, this will all be over. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise I'll come back to you. That's the only promise that matters. He started to leave, then paused at the door. Jenny. Yes. Thank you, Vincent said quietly. For seeing me. For saving me. For everything. Then he was gone, striding toward the confrontation that would decide both their fates. Jenny lay back against the pillows, her hand over her wounded side, and prayed to a God she'd stopped believing in years ago. Please. Let him survive. Let him win. Let him become the man he's meant to be. Outside her window, night fell over Naples. And somewhere in the darkness, a son prepared to face his mother one final time. The commission meeting was held in a 16th-century palazzo in the heart of Naples' neutral ground, where the 5 most powerful Mafia families gathered to settle disputes and maintain the fragile peace. Vincent arrived with only 2 men. A show of confidence, not force. The hall was magnificent, Frescoed ceilings, marble columns, a long oak table where the 5 family heads sat like judges at a tribunal. Luca Rossi was there, his face carved from stone, mourning his daughter. Don Salvatore Tattaglia, 70 years old, the longest reigning boss in Naples. Marco Stracci, ruthless and calculating. Antonio Cuneo, built like a bear with the temper to match. And at the head of the table, presiding as the commission's mediator, Tommaso Barzini, Vincent's uncle, Andy's younger brother. Isabel sat to the side, composed and elegant in black, her hands folded primly. She looked like a grieving widow, not a woman who'd orchestrated attempted murder. Every seat in the gallery was filled. This wasn't just a hearing. It was theater. Vincent walked to the center of the floor, and every eye followed him. "You called this commission," Tommaso said, his voice gravelly with age. "Speak." Vincent clasped his hands behind his back. "I'm here to present evidence that my mother, Isabel Barzini, has been conspiring to undermine my leadership, manipulate family alliances, and orchestrate the attempted murder of an innocent civilian." Murmurs rippled through the room. Isabel's expression didn't change. Wild accusations from a son who's lost his way. "I have proof," Vincent said calmly. He gestured, and one of his men brought forward a laptop, projecting images onto the white wall behind the commission table. Photographs appeared. Isabel meeting with Gabriella Rossi in secret. Financial records showing payments to offshore accounts. Phone records. Emails discussing removing obstacles and controlling the volatile son. "For the past 6 months," Vincent continued, "my mother has been building an alliance with the Rossi family. The plan was simple. Force me into a marriage with Gabriella Rossi, giving her control over both families' operations. When I resisted, she escalated. She targeted a woman named Jenny Keaton, a civilian, a waitress, because she represented something my mother can't tolerate." "And what is that?" Don Salvatore asked, leaning forward with interest. "Humanity," Vincent said simply. "Jenny knew my father before he became what he was. She loved him, and he loved her. That truth threatened the narrative my mother built, that she was the perfect wife, the devoted partner, the foundation of the Barzini empire." Isabel rose slowly. "This is absurd. A waitress has poisoned my son's mind with fantasies." "It's not fantasy," Vincent interrupted. "It's documented. My father kept journals, letters, records of every payment he made to keep Jenny safe after he left her." He nodded, and another document appeared on the screen. Andy's handwriting unmistakable. Monthly payments to JK, protection money. She must never know. She must never be touched. The date, 28 years ago. Every month. For 15 years. Until Andy's death. The room fell silent. "My father protected her from the shadows," Vincent said, his voice thick with emotion. "Even after he married you, Mother. Even after I was born. Because he loved her. And you knew it. That's why you've hated her all these years." Isabel's mask finally cracked. She was nothing. A distraction. A weakness. She was everything he couldn't have because he chose this life. Vincent's shout echoed through the hall. "And rather than accept that, you spent 30 years trying to erase her existence. You taught me to be cold, to never feel, to see people as tools. Because if I became like him, if I showed even a shred of love or vulnerability, it would prove that you'd failed. That despite everything you did, you could never make him love you." Isabel trembled with rage. "How dare you?" "I dare because I'm done living your lie." Vincent turned to the commission. 3 days ago, my mother ordered an attack on Jenny Keaton. The woman nearly died. A 19-year-old boy was tortured as bait. Gabriella Rossi was killed in the aftermath. All because my mother can't control me the way she controlled my father. "These are serious accusations," Tommaso said quietly. "Do you have proof of your mother's direct involvement?" Vincent smiled grimly. "I have better than proof. I have a witness." The doors opened. Every head turned. And Jenny walked in. She was pale, moving slowly, one hand pressed to her bandaged side. But she was upright. Alive. Defiant. Mateo supported her on one side, Tommy on the other. Isabel's face went white. No. Jenny moved to stand beside Vincent. She looked up at the commission with steady eyes. My name is Jenny Keaton, she said, her voice clear despite her pain. And I'm here to tell you the truth about Andy Barzini. For the next 20 minutes Jenny spoke. She told them about falling in love with the man who dreamed of being more than a street thug. About the pregnancy she lost. About the money that appeared in her account every month from an untraceable source. Money she never understood until now. She told them about Andy's last letter. About his suicide. About the burden he'd carried trying to be two men. The monster the Camorra needed and the man who'd loved a waitress in a small cafe. He was broken by this life, Jenny said softly. And Isabel knew it. She knew he was crumbling, and instead of helping him she pushed him harder. Made him colder. Because she needed him to be the great Andy Barzini, not a human being. Lies, Isabel hissed. All lies from a bitter old woman. Then explain the payments, Vincent said coldly. Explain the letters. Explain why my father's last words were her name. Isabel's hands clenched into fists. He was weak. He deserved. She stopped herself. But it was too late. Don Salvatore leaned back in his chair. Deserved what, Isabel? The silence was deafening. Isabel's eyes darted around the room, seeking allies, finding none. You knew he was suicidal, Vincent said, realization dawning. And you did nothing. Or worse. His eyes widened. You pushed him to it. No. You wanted him dead, Vincent breathed. So you could control the family through me. A young, inexperienced son who'd be easy to manipulate. Isabel's composure shattered completely. He was going to leave. He was going to abandon everything, the family, the business, for that whore. She pointed a shaking finger at Jenny. I saved the Barzini name. I saved you from the humiliation of having a father who ran off with a nobody. The admission hung in the air like a gunshot. Vincent stared at his mother, horror and understanding warring on his face. You told him that if he left, you'd have Jenny killed. Didn't you? Isabel said nothing. Didn't you? I did what I had to do. Isabel screamed. To protect this family. To protect you. Vincent's voice dropped to a whisper. You killed him. Maybe you didn't pull the trigger, but you killed him. Tears streamed down Isabel's face, the first genuine emotion she'd shown. I loved him. In my way I loved him. Love doesn't destroy, Jenny said quietly. Love doesn't corner. Love doesn't blackmail. What you did wasn't love, Isabel. It was possession. Isabel turned her fury on Jenny. You have no right to speak. You're the reason he's dead. If you'd never existed, he'd have found someone else to love, Vincent interrupted. Because you gave him nothing to come home to but ice and ambition. He turned to the commission. I'm asking for a formal ruling. My mother has violated the code. She's endangered innocent civilians, orchestrated unauthorized violence, and admitted to driving my father to suicide through coercion and threats. She's unfit to have any influence in this family. The 5 men conferred in hushed voices. Finally, Tommaso spoke. Isabel Barzini, you are hereby stripped of all authority within the Barzini family and the commission. You will be exiled from Naples. You will have no contact with family operations. You will live on a pension, nothing more. His eyes were hard. And if you ever threaten Jenny Keaton or any civilian again, there will be no mercy. Isabel swayed like she'd been struck. This is my family, she whispered. I built this. You built nothing, Tommaso said. You inherited power through marriage and wielded it like a weapon. Now it's done. 2 men stepped forward to escort Isabel out. She looked at Vincent one last time. Her eyes filled with hatred and broken pride. You'll regret this, she said. You'll fail without me. You'll become weak just like him. No, Vincent said firmly. I'll become better. And I'll do it without you. Isabel was led away, her sobs echoing through the marble halls. Vincent stood motionless, barely breathing. Then Jenny's hand slipped into his. He looked down at her, and the mask finally fell away completely. Tears streamed down his face, but he didn't bother to hide them. "It's over," Jenny whispered. Vincent pulled her carefully into his arms, mindful of her injury, and held her like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world. The commission watched in silence. Finally, Don Salvatore spoke. "Vincent Barzini, you've shown courage today. And wisdom. The question now is, what will you do with the power you've secured?" Vincent didn't let go of Jenny, but he met the old man's eyes. "I'm going to rebuild," he said. "This family, this city, myself. No more blood for blood's sake. No more cruelty. I'm going to find a way to do this differently." "A noble goal," Salvatore said. "And nearly impossible. Then I'll fail trying." Vincent's hand tightened on Jenny's. "But I won't fail by becoming what they were." Salvatore studied him for a long moment. Then impossibly the old man smiled. "Then you have my support. And my curiosity. Let's see if love can succeed where fear has always ruled." One by one, the other family heads nodded their agreement. Vincent had won. Not through violence. Not through manipulation. Through truth. They left the palazzo together, Vincent, Jenny, Matteo, and Tommy, stepping out into the cool Naples evening. The city lights sparkled below them like scattered diamonds. The bay stretched dark and vast, and for the first time in either of their lives, the future felt like something other than a burden. Vincent's men stood by the cars waiting, but he waved them off. "Go home," he told them. "All of you. I'll find my own way tonight." They hesitated, then obeyed. Respect, not fear, in their eyes. Tommy approached Jenny shyly, his bruises fading to yellow. "Zia, Jenny, I don't know how to thank you." Jenny cupped his face gently. "You live, Tommy. You live a good life. That's thanks enough." He hugged her carefully, then left with Matteo, who squeezed Vincent's shoulder as he passed. "Take care of her," Matteo said quietly. "With my life," Vincent promised. Then it was just the two of them, standing on the palazzo steps as the city breathed around them. "What happens now?" Jenny asked. Vincent looked down at her. This remarkable woman who'd walked into his life and shattered everything he thought he knew. Now, he smiled, that rare, genuine smile she'd come to treasure. "Now I take you home. To the villa? Wherever you want home to be." Jenny's eyes filled with tears. "I don't need a villa or money or protection. I just need me," Vincent offered softly. "You," she confirmed. He took both her hands in his, standing there under the stars his father had once walked beneath, carrying secrets and lies. But Vincent carried only the truth. "I can't promise I'll be perfect," he said. "I can't promise this world won't touch us. But I promise I'll spend every day trying to be the man you see when you look at me. The man my father never had the courage to be." "You already are," Jenny whispered. Vincent leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away, to refuse, to choose safety over this impossible thing between them. But Jenny rose on her toes, ignoring the pain in her side, and met him halfway. The kiss was gentle, reverent, promise and a beginning. When they parted, Vincent pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you, Jenny Keaton. In this life and whatever comes after. I love you, Vincent Barzini. Not despite who you are, but because of who you're becoming." He laughed softly, the sound full of wonder. "A 73-year-old waitress and a 32-year-old mafia boss. We're going to scandalize everyone." "Good," Jenny said firmly. "Let them talk. I've been invisible long enough." Vincent pulled her close, careful of her injury, and held her as the night settled around them. Somewhere in the distance church bells rang. And in that moment, standing between the weight of the past and the promise of tomorrow, two broken souls found exactly what they'd been searching for. Not redemption through blood. Not power through fear. But love. Simple, complicated, impossible, perfect love. The next morning, Jenny returned to Stella di Napoli. Matteo nearly dropped his espresso cup when she walked in. "You should be resting." I've rested enough, Jenny said, tying on her apron. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't burn the cornetti. Tommy came out from the kitchen, broke into a smile, and the cafe felt whole again. The regular customers filtered in: the postal worker, the widow from Via Toledo, the students from the university. They noticed Jenny's pallor, the careful way she moved, and asked gentle questions. She told them she'd been in an accident, that she was fine now, that life goes on. They didn't need to know about mafia commissions or gunfights or impossible love stories. Some truths were private treasures. At noon the door opened and Vincent walked in. Conversation stuttered, then stopped. Everyone recognized him. Everyone knew his name. But he walked to the counter, sat on a stool, and smiled at Jenny like she was the only person in the world. "Doppio espresso," he said. "No sugar. Just like your father used to order," Jenny replied softly. "I'm not my father." "No. You're better." She poured his coffee with steady hands, and when she set it down, their fingers brushed. Around them, the cafe slowly resumed its rhythm. Conversations restarted. Life continued. Because this was Naples. And Naples had seen stranger things than a mafia boss falling in love with a waitress. Vincent stayed for an hour, reading a book, occasionally glancing up to watch Jenny work. When he left, he kissed her cheek, right there in front of everyone, and promised to return. And he did. Every day. Slowly, imperceptibly, things changed. Vincent's operations became cleaner. The violence decreased. He invested in the community, youth centers, job programs, education. The other families watched. Waited. Some mocked him. Others wondered. But Vincent didn't care. He'd found something worth more than fear or power. He'd found purpose, peace, love. And every evening, when Jenny finished her shift and stepped out into the Naples twilight, he was there waiting. Sometimes they walked along the bay. Sometimes they ate dinner at small trattorias where no one cared about his name. Sometimes they simply sat in his villa's courtyard, surrounded by lemon trees and jasmine, and talked about everything and nothing. They were impossible. They were improbable. They were real. And in a world built on lies and violence, that was the most revolutionary thing of all. That night, as they sat under the stars, Jenny leaned against Vincent's shoulder. "Are you happy?" she asked. Vincent considered the question, truly considered it, perhaps for the first time in his life. "Yes," he said, surprised by the truth of it. "I am." "Good," Jenny said, lacing her fingers through his. "Then we're doing something right." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd found each other across years and pain and impossible circumstances. The past couldn't be changed. Andy was still gone. The pain was still real. But the future? The future was unwritten. And for the first time, neither of them was afraid of it. We have come to the end of the story. Thank you for watching to the end. Share your opinion about this story in the comments below. I like getting feedback from my audience. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our heartwarming stories.